I'm here to join my colleagues in our call to bring for a debate and vote on the Senate floor a measure that's supported, I'd argue, by probably 95 to 99% of my constituents. That is the simple idea that if you're on a terrorist watch list, if you are suspected of being involved in terrorist activities, that you shouldn't be able to purchase a gun. I'll be asking for a unanimous consent agreement in order to move this debate before the floor. But here's why it matters. What we know right now is that over the last 12 months, ISIS has lost about 25% of their territory in Iraq and Syria. Now, that's not good enough, and hopefully we will be able to join together to put even more pressure on this so-called caliphate, to shrink it down eventually to elimination. But the growth of ISIS is dependent on two narratives. One, this narrative that the so-called caliphate is growing, and second, the narrative that East is at war with West, that the Muslim world is at war with the Christian world. And as their first narrative is becoming less powerful, then the second one becomes even more important. And so, as shocking as Paris was, as shocking as San Bernardino was, it's not surprising in the respect that these attacks outside of Syria and Iraq are now becoming more important, more necessary to this terror organization in order to perpetuate this second set of mythologies around the Islamic world being at war with the Christian world. And so it is a moment now where Republicans and Democrats have to come together around hardening our country from potential attackers and potential attacks, and to recognize that because these attacks may be more important than ever before to the future expansion of ISIS, that we have to take steps to make sure that they don't occur. And so one of the simplest ways we can do that is embodied in Senator Feinstein's piece of legislation. Let's just say together that those that are on the terrorist watch list, and this is a list that you get on if you have reason for the FBI or other law enforcement to believe that you are affiliated in some way, shape, or form with a terrorist organization. You may not have committed a crime yet, but you have had communications or affiliations with terrorist organizations. Let's just agree that people on that list should be, by default, prohibited from buying guns. Now, importantly, this bill has in it provisions that would allow for those individuals to get off that list, to be able to say that they were put on it mistakenly. But let's say as a default premise that if you're on the terrorist watch list, you shouldn't be able to purchase a gun. Now, recent polling tells us that the vast, overwhelming majority of Americans support this law. And in addition, the vast, overwhelming majority of American gun owners support this law, in part because they've seen the statistics. And it bears repeating. My colleagues have talked about these numbers, but they really are stunning. Over the last 10 years, 2,223 times someone on the terrorist watch list has attempted to purchase a weapon. And in 2,043 of those instances, they were successful in purchasing the weapon, taking it home. That's a 91% success rate. Now, it may be that one or two of those 2,000 shouldn't have been on that list, but this legislation gives them the power to contest that and to get off that list eventually, as it should. But let's not live in a fantasy world in which the majority of people on this list shouldn't be there. This list isn't foolproof, but the vast majority, 95%, 99% of those on the terrorist watch list are there with reason, and they shouldn't be able to walk out of a store with a weapon. That's why 3/4 of gun owners, 90% of Americans, support this legislation. And while today it's become partisan, Republicans are standing almost in lockstep against a bill to stop terrorists from getting guns, historically it's been bipartisan. This was initially proposed by President Bush and then Attorney General Alberto Gonzales. And so let's make it bipartisan again. Let's today on the floor of the Senate, decide that we're going to have a debate on this and that we're going to bring it for a vote. Because that's where the majority of our constituents are. They want us to take steps together to stop terrorists from getting guns.